humbling to be next to something that has lived 700 years. What else have we got that lasts that long? Well, I grew up in New Jersey, the northern New Jersey, forestless suburban land, and went to college and taught for a few years at a small university, taught anthropology, and came out here to finish up a PhD degree. While I was involved in my work in the Pacific Islands doing anthropology, I was also interested in forests from a philosophical standpoint. It was around the time that one landowner, one industrial company, bought huge tracts of the ancient redwood forest and then proceeded to clear cut as much and as fast as possible. So the question came up, what is forestry? What's sustainable forestry? How do we avoid this kind of elimination of the ancient 1,000-year-old trees? There are natural disturbances, and there's natural regeneration. You have disturbances from fire, from wind throw, from disease. A lot of things can take out a portion of a landscape, or we could look at a single tree falling for one reason or another. And in a natural situation, this is what drives forests. You've got to have this cycle that brings materials and organics down to the ground where it can rot, where organisms can multiply and work at changing branches and entire trees or just yearly leaf litter into organic soils. And the soils are what drive the forest growth. Fungi, mycorrhizomes develop a webbing through the forest to carry out their own needs, reducing minerals into simple molecules. And they exchange these with tree roots, where the tree's photosynthesis is producing carbohydrates, sugars, and bringing those down into the roots to trade off with the mycorrhizomes. It's a complex ecology, and it takes decades, millennia really to develop. On the other hand, we get natural regeneration. You have fires, you have wind throws, you have a single tree falling. And pioneers who are pioneer seeds and species, looking for these opportunities where the soils are open to successfully develop their seeds. And this happens almost with a randomness, like a bird flies over after having been feeding on cascara seeds and drops a dropping into an opening. And what are the chances? That seed succeeds, and there's a cascara as a part of the component of that forest stand. So natural regeneration is critical to the complexity of forests, that one forest is not a carbon copy of the next. Different mosaics of hardwoods in one part of it, cedar and hemlock and Doug fir in other parts, and of different ages, so that we don't have a forest that just grows up and it's a 60-year-old stand and all these different species are 60 years old. It's a process in which the forest develops different layers of species. For someone to see that and understand and walk through it and experience it viscerally, you're surrounded by this community of older, younger, higher, lower, and then you go into a plantation stand and you see all the trees are like 6 feet apart, and it's dark underneath. It may look pretty because there's just moss and it's very green, but it's a biological desert compared to a natural regenerated forest stand. How people are seeing forests, and on one level, when people are leaving Eugene and driving through the Coast Range and they're seeing all this green forest, they're not realizing that this is a plantation. It doesn't look like a corn crop, but it's a crop, all the same, monocrop, growing on steep slopes. So there's some attempts. There's a lot of energy going into trying to correct what we have left and to protect what we have left. But you have to realize this is an industry like the coal industry, like the tobacco industry, like the pharmaceutical industry. They are there to generate profit. And it matters if profit is at 17% one year or 17.5%. Stockholders and CEOs are culturally invested in the concept of profit. So how do you deal with that? Would we ever expect a morality, a concern about lost ecosystems, lost endangered species? I'm in a unique position because my wife has held a full-time job, well-paying in medicine for as long as we've been out here. We don't have to look at our forest as, oh my God, we can't pay the bills. I'm not from a logging family that needs to pay the bills, so clearly they see forests differently. So we've lived with this power play of the profit-oriented Wall Street. And Wall Street affects decision-making in these large tracts of land. As an anthropologist, I understand this, and I understand the subculture of the logging industry, where 3 generations of loggers, a logging family, are very proud. Dangerous work, important work, so they're very supportive of continuing to access whatever we can get, keeping their jobs alive, their families fed. It's a very proud culture. So you take these elements of rural logging communities and you take the culture of Wall Street. This is a tough scenario to bring about the changes that are really necessary. There are agencies who have to do that protection through regulations, but in 40 years, a lot of these agencies are too cowed by the industry, and so rules and regulations simply didn't change. Some of the tours, when we walk through the woods, I really hope that a few of the people will understand that they're in a community, and that a community of plants and animals. And then when they go hiking, if they carry that with them, if they could just go sit in the woods long enough, frequently or just enough to make a difference, that they not only see the place of trees and plants, other plants, but what their place is. You know, what is their place in this community? You're sitting here and you're watching it and experiencing it, but what is your place in this little community? You're a human being. You may be the only one in this particular locale, but you're sitting amongst a community of plants and animals that have this ongoing relationship, and then you're there. So what is your relationship to it?